My parents skipped my special event to watch my sister swim. When my wedding photos went online, Mom claimed I tricked them. Dad cried, and Grandpa called them cowards. Now they want forgiveness, but I'm too busy enjoying the life they never thought I could build. Hey Reddit, my folks spent my whole life acting like my sister was the only kid in the house. So I figured fine, let them have their favorite. I built my own life and kept my distance. Turns out they weren't done turning things upside down. Before it all blew up, here's how everything actually started. I'm Chris, 27, civil engineer, older brother to Emily, the star swimmer of our town, according to my mom. My family lineup is simple. Rebecca, my mom, treats Emily like she's made of gold. Edward, my dad, stays quiet and follows whatever Rebecca decides. And Grandpa Albert, my dad's dad, is the only one who's ever acted like I mattered just as much as my sister. That's pretty much the whole dynamic. The favoritism didn't show up one day all at once. It was slow, steady, and honestly pretty obvious even when I was a kid. In middle school, I had a science fair project I was actually proud of. I'd drawn diagrams, built a little model, stayed up way too late the night before to glue everything straight. They showed up at the beginning, took one photo, then left early because Emily had swim practice across town. I remember packing up by myself and thinking that maybe it was just bad timing. By high school, I'd stopped expecting them at anything I did. My academic award night, something I had worked for over years, was completely ignored because Emily had a qualifying meet the same evening. Rebecca said, "She only gets one shot at this." Like my entire academic track was just a warm-up lap. Then came college, the big one. They'd told me since childhood that I had an education fund. It was why we didn't do expensive vacations, or why I couldn't have certain things when I was younger. "This is for your future," they'd say. But when I got my acceptance letter, suddenly the story changed. Rebecca had medical bills, Edward had lost his job for a bit, and apparently the fund went into keeping the family steady. Except later, years later, I found out through a cousin that a big chunk of that money helped pay for Emily's first car, and part of the deposit for her apartment near the swim center. I guess that was also keeping the family steady. Because of that missing fund, I had to pick the cheaper university. I pulled insane hours in engineering labs, worked part-time construction just to stay afloat, and took out loans. I'm still paying off now. I don't mind being a civil engineer. I actually like the work, but the climb would have been a lot easier if the money that was supposedly mine hadn't drifted toward my sister's lane. I'm not dramatic about any of this. I don't sit around replaying every bad moment, but I do keep mental notes so I don't convince myself I imagined it. Dry humor helps. A lot of, yeah, of course that happened. Petro, it's easier to laugh at it than pretend it never bothered me. I met Ashley in college during one of those study nights where everyone pretends they're going to finish their assignments, but ends up talking about everything else instead. We clicked fast. She never tried to fix anything with my family or pull the whole, "but they're your parents" line. She just listened and let me deal with things at my own pace. That's probably why I trusted her quicker than I expected to. Through all of this, Grandpa Albert has been the one steady person who actually shows up. Even though he lives far, he calls often, asks about work, asks about Ashley, tells me he's proud of me, usually without any big speech. Just simple things like, "You're doing good, kid." It means more than he probably knows. I thought the favoritism had reached its peak when I graduated college, and they didn't show up. But apparently the universe decided there was still one level left. Things really blew up. Like, actually blew up, after Emily posted something online about me, and everyone saw it. The whole thing really kicked off on a random Tuesday morning. I was sitting in my truck outside a construction site, finishing a lukewarm breakfast sandwich, when my phone buzzed nonstop. At first, I figured it was a group chat blowing up, or some scheduling mess from the crew. Nope, it was Emily. Or more specifically, a TikTok she posted that had already been reposted to Instagram. It was a short video, her in her swim jacket, hair still damp, making a mock confused face at the camera while text floated above her head. When people who never made it in sports pretend their boring desk jobs are impressive. The caption underneath, "Some of us actually push ourselves." I didn't need a tag to know it was about me, but she didn't leave it subtle. She added, "At some of y'all who know exactly who I mean." Comment section was full of laughing emojis, flame emojis, people from our old school saying things like, "LOL savage," and, of course, my mom Rebecca, who commented, "Facts," with a clapping emoji. A couple of my aunts shared it. 2 of my old classmates tagged me with "LOL this you," like they were 14 again. I didn't comment, didn't like it, didn't reply. I just closed the app and put my phone face down on the passenger seat. I had an actual job to do. My day wasn't glamorous. It never is. But it's real work. Something my family never understood. Most weeks I split time between plans on a screen and steel-toe days in the field. This one was very much the latter. I was overseeing an expansion project for a small bridge outside the city. Cold wind, loud machinery, dust everywhere. I spent half the morning double-checking alignment measurements, scribbling math on scrap paper, and trying to explain to a contractor why he couldn't just eyeball a load-bearing angle. The inspector showed up at lunch and started grilling us about drainage plans we'd literally submitted a week ago. I stood there answering question after question, flipping through a binder with muddy fingerprints on the cover, while the crew waited for the go-ahead. Stressful, but normal for me. It hit me while talking to him how ridiculous Emily's video was. I wasn't sitting at some cozy desk drinking iced lattes. I was making sure a structure meant to hold thousands of cars didn't collapse. But in my family, none of that mattered because it didn't earn medals or get clapped for by swim parents. Later that afternoon, my boss called me into the trailer. The city had officially approved the design I'd led for months. Long emails, revisions, late-night drafting sessions, finally worth something. He handed me the paperwork and said I'd be taking point on a new project starting next quarter. Slight pay bump, more responsibility. It was a win, a real one. Not flashy, but mine. I told Ashley after work. She hugged me, asked a million questions about the new project, and said she was proud of me in that straightforward way she always does. Then I told 2 coworkers I trusted and sent a text to Grandpa Albert, who replied almost immediately, "Knew you'd get there. Keep going." I didn't post anything about it online. Didn't feel like feeding the same people who liked Emily's video. That night, while I was putting away my work boots, my phone buzzed again. It was a DM from Emily. "You could have been something if you actually pushed yourself." "Cool," I replied. That was it. She didn't follow up. She probably expected me to defend myself or argue, but I wasn't giving her that. Ashley walked by and asked, "Everything okay?" I said, "Yeah, just the usual." She didn't push. She just gave that small frown she gets whenever my family's nonsense shows up again. A little later, Grandpa Albert called. He said my cousin had forwarded him the video. He sounded irritated in that quiet, controlled way he gets. He said, "Don't waste breath on it, kid. You don't need to fight her online. Just keep going. People see more than you think." I knew he meant it. And honestly, hearing it from him meant more than any apology I'd ever get from the rest of them. Before we hung up, I told him something I hadn't told anyone else yet. "I've got something coming up soon," I said. "Kind of important. I'm inviting them, but I already know how it'll probably go." Albert sighed. "Send me the date. I'll be there." And that was that. I didn't know it yet, but the thing I was planning, my big event, was about to pull every buried family issue right to the surface. I'll start with the part that happened a little before everything blew up. Ashley and I had been talking about the future for months. Nothing dramatic, just small comments during long drives or late study nights. The proposal wasn't some movie scene with fireworks or violins. It was on a quiet trail we'd done a dozen times, heading up before sunrise because she liked watching the sky change colors from the ridge. I had the ring box in my jacket pocket, and I swear it felt like it weighed 5 pounds. My hands kept shaking every time I reached for it, so I waited until we got to the top. The light was just starting to hit the clouds. Ashley was talking about how cold her fingers were, and I somehow decided that was the moment. I reached for the box and almost dropped it. She laughed when she saw how red my face got. I told her I'd planned to say something smooth, but all that came out was, "Do you want to marry me?" The words were uneven, like I tripped over them. She didn't even let me finish. She said yes instantly and threw her arms around me. No audience, no staged photos. Just us, breathing in cold air and trying not to fall over on the uneven rocks. It felt right. A week later, I drove to my parents' house to tell them. I should have predicted how it'd go, but I went in with at least a little hope they'd show interest. I told Rebecca first, and she didn't even blink. "That's nice," she said, and within seconds shifted into talking about Emily's new best times at practice and how the coach thought she might qualify for a regional team soon. She didn't ask when the proposal happened, how I did it, or anything about Ashley. Edward looked up from the TV and said, "Congratulations, son," in a half whisper. No follow-up questions, no curiosity. It felt like telling distant coworkers, not my parents. I went home shaking my head but not surprised. Ashley didn't ask how they reacted. She could guess. Fast forward to the present. I was at work reviewing drainage calculations when I got a message from one of my cousins. She casually mentioned Emily was heading to an elite swim camp that summer and that my parents were paying for a private coach to work with her one-on-one. I didn't react right away. I asked, "Where'd they get the money for all that?" She replied, "From what was left of what they'd started calling the emergency fund, which used to be my education fund after they repurposed it." It took me a minute to even process it. That fund had supposedly gone toward Rebecca's medical bills and Edward's job loss period. That's what they told me when I started college. I accepted it back then because what else could I do? But then later I found out it helped buy Emily's first car, then part of her apartment near the swim center, and now this. Swim camp and a private coach. Family survival, huh? I sat there staring at the message, realizing nothing had changed in almost 15 years. Emily needed something, and the rest of us bent around her needs. If she wanted a new opportunity, the money magically appeared. If I wanted help with tuition, the well was dry. For about 5 minutes, I seriously considered whether there was anything legally I could do. But I had nothing in writing. No hard records. Too much time had passed. And honestly, the idea of dragging Ashley into court battles with my family made my stomach turn. I wasn't putting her through that. So instead, Ashley and I kept planning our wedding. Small, calm, and quiet. Mostly her family, our close friends, and a few people from my dad's side who actually treated me like a human being growing up. We didn't need a huge event. We just wanted something meaningful. We picked a date that worked for everyone else we cared about. And when all the details were set, I sent a message to Rebecca and Edward. I reminded them, again, that Ashley and I were engaged. I gave them the exact date, told them it was important to me. I didn't write the word wedding. I wanted to see if they'd ask, if they were even paying attention to my life at all. Rebecca responded in under a minute. "Emily has a huge meet that day. We can't miss it. She needs us there." That was their number. Even if the meet shifted earlier or later, they were already choosing it over me. No, what's the event? No hesitation, no curiosity, just a decision made for both of them. Edward didn't say a word. I typed, "Okay," and left it at that. I didn't feel angry, just tired. It was the exact outcome I expected, and somehow that made it easier to accept. If I had told them outright it was my wedding, I already knew what would have happened. They would have pressured me to change the date so it didn't interfere with Emily's schedule. This way, they made their choice without me guiding them. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. Grandpa Albert. He wrote, "Heard from your dad, you've got something planned. Send me the address. I'll be there." No excuses. I didn't smile often when it came to family stuff, but that message did it. Whatever happened next, at least one person in my bloodline had always shown up. And he wasn't about to stop now. The morning of the wedding felt exactly like every wedding movie gets wrong. Nothing matched the mood boards Ashley had saved on her phone. I woke up already feeling behind schedule. My cufflinks were missing. I could have sworn I packed them the night before, but they were nowhere in the garment bag. While I tore through my pockets and replayed every place I might have set them down, one of Ashley's cousins came in, asking if I knew where the boutonniere went, because someone had definitely left it on the counter, but now the counter is completely empty. A kid ran through the backyard setup holding a juice box and managed to knock over a folding chair without even noticing. Someone else tried connecting the Bluetooth speaker to test the music, and within seconds, two people were loudly arguing about who had stolen the connection. It wasn't polished. It wasn't organized. But everybody was laughing, fixing things as they went. And honestly, the chaos made it feel real. Ashley somehow was calm, excited but not stressed. Her friends floated between us carrying messages like, she said, "Stop pacing, you're wearing the floor down," or she said, "Remind him the boutonniere is not your responsibility." Every time I got too tense, someone made a joke that cracked the whole room up. It wasn't the vibe you get from perfect wedding photos, but it felt like family, the good kind. Grandpa Albert arrived earlier than everyone else. He got out of the car and immediately complained about the parking situation like he was evaluating a crime scene. "They made the spots too narrow," he muttered, even though there was plenty of room. He walked straight toward me, squinted up at my collar and said, "Your tie looks like it survived a tornado. Come here." He fixed it in 3 seconds. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out something wrapped in soft cloth. Inside was a small pin that belonged to my grandmother, something she used to wear on her sweaters every Sunday. "She would have liked today," he said, "and she'd be proud of you. So am I." I didn't know what to say without getting emotional, so I just nodded. About an hour before the ceremony started, my phone buzzed. Edward had sent a text. "We won't make it. Meet change times. Hope everything goes well." Phrased exactly like that, and nothing about what he was missing. A minute later, Rebecca sent her own message. Not about the wedding, not even a hint that she remembered what was happening. Just, "Big day for Emily. She's so nervous but excited. Wish us luck." I stared at both messages for about 10 seconds. Then I handed my phone to one of my friends and said, "Just keep this away from me today." He nodded and tucked it into his jacket like he was guarding a national secret. And with that, they were officially not coming. The ceremony started late because Ashley's nephew decided to use the aisle runner as a racetrack, but once everyone settled, the whole scene softened. Ashley walked toward me with this nervous little smile she does when she's trying not to cry too soon. Her dress wasn't magazine perfect. One of the straps kept slipping, but she looked incredible. Our vows were simple. We both messed up a couple of words. Everyone laughed in a warm, not mocking way. Ashley's parents were tearing up before we even got halfway through. My small handful of relatives clapped loudly at the wrong moment, and Albert sat front row, hands folded, watching me like he'd been waiting years to see this. It wasn't flawless, but it was honest, and it felt like mine. After the ceremony, the photographer wrangled everyone into group photos. People kept wandering out of place. Someone's toddler refused to stand still. The wind kept pushing Ashley's hair into her face. But the pictures turned out great because everyone looked genuinely happy. When things settled down a little, I heard someone say, "Your aunt posted already." Sure enough, my dad's sister had uploaded a picture of us standing under the arch with the caption, "Wonderful day." Sad some people chose to be somewhere else. Not subtle, but not wrong. Our town's community groups eat this stuff up. A younger cousin added her own touch, posting an Instagram reel of us. Her caption? "Congrats to Chris and Ashley Wild who didn't show though." Also not wrong. Ashley and I left the next morning for a short honeymoon. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place a couple hours away. We kept our phones completely off. No notifications, no messages, no family drama bleeding into our first few days as a married couple. For a little while, it felt like we'd stepped into a pocket of peace where my parents couldn't reach us. But peace doesn't usually last long in my family. When Ashley and I got home from the honeymoon, the first thing I did was plug in my dead phone. It powered on, buzzed once, then basically had a seizure. Notifications poured in so fast the screen froze twice. Missed calls, group chat explosions, texts from numbers I didn't even recognize anymore. I didn't need to open anything to know what had happened. My aunt's Facebook post from the wedding and my cousin's Instagram reel had spread way farther than either of them probably meant. By the time the phone unfroze, I was staring at dozens of screenshots people sent me. My aunt's post had been shared across a bunch of local groups. Someone had commented, "This is the same family that skipped his graduation a few years back, right?" Another wrote, "They were always bragging about that swimmer daughter. Guess now everyone sees it." There were comments from old neighbors, distant relatives, even people who recognized the last name from school. A few brought up specific things from years ago, times when Rebecca went on and on about Emily's swim meets, while ignoring anything I was involved in. Stuff I didn't even realize anyone else noticed. My cousin's IG reel got its own traction. Then the messages started. The first thread was from Rebecca. "How could you do this? You tricked us on purpose. You set us up to be embarrassed." Then she shifted into guilt mode. "I'm your mother. How could you humiliate me like this? You know how much stress I'm under with Emily's season. I can't believe you treat us this way." She never once mentioned the wedding itself, or missing it, or me. Then came Emily's messages. "Unbelievable. You ruined my biggest meet of the season. Ashley is manipulating you. I know you told the family on purpose to make us look bad. You're jealous I actually succeeded at something." I just scrolled through them until my thumb hurt. There wasn't a single line about congratulations. Not one about being happy for me. Just anger that the world finally saw what had been happening for years. I didn't even get the chance to respond to anything before my phone rang. It was Grandpa Albert. He didn't ask if I'd seen the posts. He only said, "I'm heading over to your parents' place." I tried to tell him not to bother. He ignored me and hung up. Later that afternoon, he called again. His voice wasn't shaking or angry. It was steady, which somehow carried more weight. "I talked to them," he said. "Your mother tried to defend herself. Didn't get far." I didn't say anything. He kept going. I told her straight, "You ignored your son." And she knew exactly what I meant. Every missed event, every excuse, every time she talked about Emily like no one else existed. Then he said he turned to Edward and told him, "You knew it wasn't fair. You just stayed quiet because it was easier." According to Albert, that was the part that finally hit him. Edward apparently sat down, put his head in his hands, and admitted he'd known for years. He'd just convinced himself it wasn't his place to interfere, or that Rebecca meant well. But missing the wedding, something he couldn't pretend away, finally snapped him out of whatever fog he'd been in. "He said he's starting counseling," Albert told me. "He said he wants to fix things with you. Slowly. Properly. I didn't know how to respond to that. Wanting to fix something and actually doing it are different things, especially with him. As for Rebecca, Albert said she was still stuck in the same loop. Angry one minute, crying the next, insisting none of this was her fault. That woman, he muttered, is allergic to accountability. Not long after, messages from my mom's sisters started rolling in. A wall of texts calling me cold, ungrateful, selfish, saying I should have reminded Rebecca what the event was. As if it was my job to repeatedly wave my arms and shout, "Care about me?" until she finally heard it. It was all noise, all predictable. So I posted one simple message on my own profile. No fancy font, no dramatic speech. I invited them. They chose something else. And I turned off comments. That was all I had to say. Later that night, I checked the results of the swim meet Emily skipped my wedding for. She placed poorly. Not last, not injured, nothing dramatic, just not the win Rebecca had hyped for months. If there was ever a metaphor for how misplaced their priorities were, that was it. By evening, the tone of the messages from my parents had changed again. Edward sent a long text apologizing. Very straightforward, no blaming. Rebecca sent another stream of, "I can't believe you'd let people think we're bad parents," followed by voice notes I didn't listen to. And then the final twist. They wanted to talk, fix things, explain, and rebuild as a family. I stared at the screen, feeling weirdly calm. For the first time in my life, their urgency didn't matter to me. They cared now because the town cared, because their reputation took a hit, because the favoritism they kept behind closed doors finally spilled out. But for once, I wasn't rushing to meet them halfway. Whatever came next would happen on my timeline, not theirs. And honestly, I didn't feel any hurry at all. I agreed to meet Rebecca and Edward at a diner a little outside town. Neutral ground, no memories attached to it, nothing either of them could twist into their space. Ashley came with me, not to talk for me, just to sit beside me in case things went sideways. When we walked in, they were already seated. Rebecca looked tense, eyes already glassy, like she was preparing for a dramatic moment. Edward looked tired in a way I had never really seen before. Not annoyed tired, not bored tired, but worn down. The server had barely poured water before Edward spoke. He said, "I need to say something before anything else." Then he took a breath. I stayed quiet because it was easier. That is the truth. I let your mother run everything, and I told myself it was not my place to interfere. He did not look up, just stared at the napkin he was twisting between his fingers. I knew things were not fair, he added. For years I knew. I avoided conflict. I thought you would be fine because you were the steady one. That was wrong. I was wrong. It was the most direct I had ever heard him be. He went on to say he was in counseling now. He had started the week after Albert confronted him. He said, "I am not asking you to forgive me right now. I am asking for a chance to show you I mean it." Then he offered, without hesitation, to repay what he could from the old fund. Slowly, in whatever amounts he was able. He said it was not a bribe, not a fix, just responsibility. That part actually surprised me. Rebecca jumped in immediately after, and the mood changed fast. She said, "You blindsided us. You know that, right?" Then, "We had no idea it was your wedding. You should have made that clear." Then, "You made us look uncaring, and everyone online is acting like we abandoned you." She kept switching lanes, defense, tears, denial, excuses, like she was waiting for me to jump in and say she was right. Ashley kept her eyes on her hands, not reacting to anything. Rebecca said, "I was supporting Emily. That is what a mother does. She had real chances. She still does. I did what I had to do for her future." I let her talk until she ran out of breath. Then I went through the specifics. Middle school, my science fair, high school, my award night, college, my graduation, the fund, the car, the apartment, the camp, and private coach, every missed event, every brushed off moment. I said each one slowly, not dramatic, just factual. By the time I finished, Rebecca had gone quiet. She was staring at the table like she had not realized how long the list would be. Edward looked like someone had punched the air out of him. After a moment, I told them where I stood. I said, "I can try to rebuild something with Dad. Slowly, if actions match what he is saying." Then I looked at Rebecca. "With you, I need distance. I am not ready for anything more than that. You need to work on yourself, not me." She opened her mouth, probably to argue, but closed it again. Maybe for the first time she understood that pushing would make things worse. We left shortly after. No hugs, no raised voices, just the truth laid out with nowhere to hide it. A few days later, Emily texted me saying she wanted to talk face to face. I agreed, mostly to close the loop. We met at a small park near the river. a spot everyone used for walking dogs or jogging. She arrived in athletic clothes, hair tied back like she had come straight from training. The first thing she said was, "People are treating me like I am the villain. Not hello. Not anything about the wedding." She went on, "Swimming is all I have. You know that." When everyone started talking, it made me look bad. It made Mom look bad. "You embarrassed the whole family." I let her talk until she ran out of steam. She kept shifting her weight like she expected me to apologize. Instead, I said, "I am not trying to embarrass anyone. I just stopped pretending none of this happened." She rolled her eyes and said something about me being dramatic. Then she tried to throw in a comment about how Ashley probably loved the attention. I did not react. I did not argue. I did not feed the fire. I just stood there and let her words fall flat. Eventually, she realized I was not taking the bait. The conversation fizzled out after that, and she left without saying goodbye. I walked home feeling strangely calm. Not satisfied, not triumphant, just done chasing explanations from people who were never going to give them. Later that night, Grandpa Albert called. He said, "Heard you met with them. Sounds like you kept your cool. I am proud of you for that." I told him a little about how it went, and he said exactly what I needed to hear. Some folks do not change until they lose something they thought they always had. That part is not on you. A few months later, work picked up again. My boss pulled me aside and handed me a separate project, bigger than anything I had handled before. Not the one from the bridge trailer. This was a different build with a wider scope. I took it without hesitation. It felt good to have something in my life moving forward on steady legs. While everything with my family was loud and messy, work was simple. Show up, do the job, build something real. That was the turning point. Not dramatic, not final. Just the moment where things stopped revolving around what my parents did or did not do. From here, everything shifted forward. A few months passed, and life slowly settled into something steady. No drama, no surprise messages, no sudden family explosions. Just calm, which was new for me. Ashley and I fell into a routine that made sense for both of us. We worked on small projects around the house on weekends, fixed a shaky shelf in the laundry room, argued about paint colors in a joking way, and talked a lot about things we wanted to save for. Nothing huge, just practical plans we could actually reach. I was handling the new project at work, which kept me busy, but in a satisfying way. Ashley was doing well in her own job, and every night felt like we were building something piece by piece without needing anyone else's approval. Every month, like clockwork, Edward sent a small repayment. Each envelope had a short handwritten note inside. Nothing dramatic, just lines like, "Still working on making things right," or "I know this is overdue." Sometimes the amounts were tiny, but the consistency mattered more than the money itself. He stayed in therapy too, which I knew because he mentioned it only when I asked. It felt like he was trying quietly instead of trying loudly for show. That was enough for now. Rebecca, on the other hand, stayed mostly silent. Then one afternoon, I got a long email from her. It was the first thing she had written that did not blame, twist, or deflect. She explained she had started her own counseling. She said she realized she often centered everything around Emily because she thought being a good mother meant always fueling her daughter's success. She admitted she forgot she had 2 children. She apologized without excuses. I read the whole thing and then read it again. It did not instantly fix anything, but it did feel like the first real moment of accountability I had ever seen from her. I replied that I appreciated the apology and hoped she kept doing the work. I did not open the door wider than that. Distance was still necessary. As for Emily, her swim season ended in a string of average placements. Nothing terrible, nothing exciting, just normal. For someone who grew up being told she was destined for greatness, normal hit hard. She sent me a couple of messages complaining about how people see her as the bad guy now, and said she wished everyone would move on already. I did not argue, and I did not comfort her. I simply said I hoped she figured things out. Then, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, she showed up at our door. Ashley and I were in the middle of rearranging the living room when we heard a knock. When I opened the door, Emily was standing there with her arms wrapped around herself, eyes red like she had been crying on the drive over. Before I could say anything, Grandpa Albert, who was visiting for the day, walked up behind me and said, "Let her in." Emily stepped inside like she was afraid I might change my mind. She kept rubbing her palms together, pacing a little near the sofa. Albert sat in the armchair across from her, watching her with his usual steady gaze. After a moment, Emily finally broke. She said, "I am sorry." Not dramatic, not loud, just a tired, honest-sounding apology. "I was awful to you. Mom was awful to you. I did not see it, because everyone kept telling me I was special and needed support. I thought that meant you did not need anything. And that was wrong. She cried harder then, covering her face with both hands. Ashley sat next to her gently, not saying a word, just being present. Emily said she did not understand how much damage all the favoritism had caused until the wedding fallout. She admitted that hearing people talk about her like she was selfish made her realize how selfish she had actually been. She said missing the wedding made her feel sick when she finally understood what she had skipped. I want to fix things, she said, but I know it will take a long time. I believed that part. She was not asking for instant forgiveness or pretending everything could go back to normal in a week. She was simply telling the truth, maybe for the first time in her life. I told her I forgave her. Not fully, not blindly, not in a way that erased everything. But I said the words because they were true in the simplest sense. I was done carrying anger around. Forgiveness did not mean immediate closeness. It just meant I was willing to try someday. She nodded, wiped her face, and thanked me. It was the calmest we had ever spoken to each other. Albert stood up afterward and said, "Good, that needed to happen." Coming from him, that was basically a standing ovation. Later that evening, Ashley and I took Albert for a slow walk around the neighborhood, like we usually did when he visited. The air was mild, and the sky had that soft glow that comes right before sunset. Albert walked with his hands behind his back, taking his time. After a few minutes, he said, "When I was younger, I kept bending over backward for people who never met me halfway. It took me too long to realize I was trading my energy for nothing. You learn eventually that you cannot fix people who do not show up." He looked at me then and added, "You did right by setting your line. You did right by standing firm. That is how you keep your sanity." Ashley squeezed my hand lightly. Walking with them, I felt something I had not felt in years. Not victory, not vindication, just relief. A clean sort of quiet in my chest, where the old heaviness used to sit. Things were not perfect. Maybe they never would be. But the life I had now, with Ashley, with Albert, with steady work and real peace, felt like something I had built myself, without waiting for my family to notice. When we got back to the house, I watched Albert ease himself into a chair on the porch and thought about the long, tangled path that had brought me here. I am not one for dramatic lines, but the truth came simple. I stopped chasing people who never came. I am fine where I am now. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.